Hello and welcome to Revive Talk. We are so glad you've joined us today. Today we have an incredible guest, author of the book World Changer, A Mother's Story, founder of Operation 300 and American activist Karen Vaughn. Karen, thank you so much for being here with us.
It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
We're so looking forward to this conversation, and I am going to open the doors in just a huge way. And I'm going to ask this question and let you go where you want to go. What do you see that is wrong in America today?
You want me to blow the roof off this place?
Come on, just fire away.
Oh my goodness. You know, the climate, our political climate is about to have the best of me. It really is. And I'm glad you just opened it up and let me talk about different things other than just my situation, Aaron's death, things like that. It's good to, to use your voice on some other things that I think are really important. And so here we go. Yesterday, I put a post on my Facebook page that was basically calling out Donald Trump for some tweets he's put out about Joe Scarborough, and me saying that while I support him and I support his presidency, you didn't think I'd go here, did you?
That's fine with me.
Not at all.
We invited you to go wherever you wanted to go.
This can be pretty lively.
While I support him and I support his presidency, we have got to become a nation of people again who can have real conversations about what's wrong with the people that we are, supporting politically. Because to me, if no one ever challenges your weaknesses, they're just encouraged to grow. And so we all know that attacking, and I don't say attacking Joe Scarborough in this tweet, and I'm not trying to put down the president. I'm trying to give some context here. He didn't just attack Joe Scarborough, because everybody keeps saying, well, he's a great president because he punches back when people punch at him. Well, he didn't punch at just Joe Scarborough. He also punched at a dead woman who has no voice to speak for herself, and basically called her a home-wrecking cheater. You know, she was married. And I just kept thinking of it, if that was my daughter and somebody was disparaging her that way 19 years after her death, that I had accepted as a natural death, natural causes, I would be outraged. And I feel like, on both sides of the aisle, if we start being honest about the faults of our leaders, we can come to some sort of middle ground. But what happened in this election that was so troubling to me as a person who has given much for this nation is this. It all started, this whirlwind began as soon as Donald Trump was nominated, not just elected, but when his nomination, as he became the Republican candidate, we started seeing this whirlwind of hatred stir up and disbelief that he had achieved that. I was one of the first people in my circle of friends that said, I'm voting for Donald Trump. And they gasped at me when I said it. Yeah. I said, we need that kind of leadership in America. We need a businessman, not another career politician, we need somebody who speaks off the cuff. And so I'm 100% supportive of that. But what it began was, as the left began attacking him, they also began attacking us who supported him, calling us disparaging names. And so I think what's happened is the dynamic has moved forward so rapidly to us versus them. Instead of, we are all citizens of this nation and we have political differences that we should be able to work through and settle together, it has become like a basketball championship where everybody's wearing their colors. And what is that? That's not what my son died for. And so I'm trying to be that person in my circle of influence that says, hey, I'm willing to talk about what's wrong with him. I'm not following him blindly. Right. I'm willing to talk about what's wrong with him. Now, how about you do the same thing? And let's talk honestly about the content of each person's character and see who it is in November of this year we want to elect as the president of the United States.
I don't think there's any doubt that one of the things that was a significant change when we saw Donald Trump come into the presidency was the dignity and respect publicly of what we would say, what we were able to say, capable of saying. It's like we backed off on all the let's be respectful to the let's throw the gut punches. And we're not even debating right now, I don't think, whether there's truth or untruth, whether there was a swamp to drain or not to drain, whether there's a lot of power grabbing and that thing going on. It's more about how we're addressing it, because
Right.
the way we're addressing it brings out a venom in both sides.
Yes. And that's so sad, because what I feel like we're witnessing is the decay of the society. And what I'm calling out in this president is, you are probably going to be, Donald Trump, the greatest president. As history looks back, you're probably going to have accomplished more than any other president in our nation's history. You have had a phenomenal history. Now I'm going to say, please stop antagonizing people against each other. I understand that there's never been anybody who's come up against so much scrutiny and so much disparagement and so much cruelty than the Trump family has during this presidency, and it's not fair. But we know as believers that the way you deal with people who are attacking you is to let God deal with them, not you. As soon as you start trying to deal with them, you diminish yourself to the same level they're on, and nobody wins. And so if you want to win this battle, just keep doing the hard. And I know I've taken this probably somewhere you didn't expect, but I'm very frustrated about this, because what it is it's saying that the whole world is going to be an eye for an eye. Let's just start attacking each other, what you were saying, and let's just get as low as we can go. And the lowest blow wins the argument.
Yeah.
And that's not who we are as people of God. And I'm very discouraged by this.
I think that one of the truly sad things about it is we're seeing some absolutely great things accomplished.
Yes.
Moving the embassy to Israel,
Yes.
some of the religious freedom, some of the shutting down of the enforcement of the Johnson Act, those kind of things. Christians want to be able to stand up and say, I support that. Those are the things we've been waiting to happen. But then you're always having to say, but we know this attack, and but we know these things that were said, and but we know he's not perfect. And it becomes a huge challenge, because you have these great advancements, things against abortion, the funding of abortion, and the things that we want to support. And yet we have to defend what we know we can't defend in some of the things said and some of the attacks that happen. So it makes it very difficult for the believer to say, I'm totally behind this man, because I can't defend some of these things done.
And then other believers shake their heads at you in disgust. Because, and I don't know if you read it, but it's been 3 years now since I wrote this little blog post on my Facebook page. And people titled it The Salty Sailor. I never gave it a title, but it went extremely viral and it still continues to go viral. And it was basically that same concept. Here's what I like about Donald Trump. I like what he does. When did we become a society of people as believers who said, I can only vote for a man who says the right things? Because Satan can say the right things. Sure. He does, but what does he do? And so my thing was, stop focusing on what he's saying and focus on what he's doing. And I said, in that post that I guess resonated with people is, if a fireman was pulling you out of a burning building, you're not looking to him to save your soul, or to be your spiritual guide. You wouldn't care what he said, what came out of his mouth.
Right.
All you'd care about is that he's saving you from disaster. And that's how I look at the Donald Trump presidency. That's what I care about. That's why I'll vote for him. I'll campaign for him, and I'll do surrogate work for him leading up to 2020. But you're right. It has become very difficult to defend him. And I really don't want to be in the position of defending him. I believe people who say things like that need to own what they say.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened with my post yesterday. And social media lost their minds because Karen Vaughn said, I have a problem with something Donald Trump said.
Yeah.
So today I listed his achievements, and we've got to keep that balance, but we have to, like you said, focus on what he is doing for the pro-life. We've never had a more pro-church president, a pro-God president. And everybody else gave good lip service. But they did not do the things that would enact change for our causes, for the things that we care about as believers. So
true. It's a real challenge when you look back and talk about what candidates have said.
Yeah.
And you realize a lot of candidates have said things in order to get elected and then never done those things.
Right.
And you take a Donald Trump and you say, well, he said them and he actually does them. But then we have to put up with all this too, and it's hard to defend. Right. So it puts the believer in a sticky place. But if you go back and you just look at record, if you look at accomplishment, if you look at the things that are being done in the realm of Christendom, in the realm of the believer, it's a great president.
Well, and also speaking right to that same thing is, we're in a world now of so much misinformation being poured on us constantly. Mm-hmm. And it is also a stressor because it just seems like everybody is trying to exploit our sensibilities. You know what I mean? On both sides of these issues. And it's become a very dangerous environment. Where do we go for truth? I was just quoted in an article that Reuters put out just a few days ago, and they completely got it wrong. They actually said in Reuters, as a fact check to something Reuters made a fact check to something I had put on social media.
Uh-huh.
And in their fact check, they actually said that my husband and I were part of a lawsuit against the Obama administration.
Wow.
We weren't.
You weren't aware of that, huh?
Well, we were aware that it took place, but we weren't. So the fact checkers were saying something about me that was blatantly false. And if they had done any fact checking, so that's what I'm saying. Like, and I put that out and I said, look, this is where we are right now. You can't believe a thing you read. All you can believe is what happened in front of you, wherever you are, because we've gotten to a level of crazy in this whole thing with misinformation.
Yeah, if I can throw this out there, one of the things that I think contributed to the huge difficulty we have with the media and what they're reporting is that for you and I, when we were young, the news was 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock.
Right.
And it was 1 hour at 6 and 1 hour at 10. And they had 1 hour at 6 o'clock.
And you didn't get to record it and watch it if you missed it.
Right.
But they had 1 hour at 6 o'clock to tell you what was going on in the country, and they had 1 hour at 10 o'clock. But then what happened in the evolution of news media is it turned into 24 hours of news, which meant you don't have 24 hours of news, so let's get people on for their opinions. And now we've turned into opinion shows.
Calling them news shows.
News shows.
Yeah.
And there's a little news scattered in there so that we can express our opinion, which makes the media then very difficult to believe because you know it's taking sides and you don't know what story you're going to get today or you know what media is against the president, what media is for the president, but they're trying to fill that 24-hour time with something.
That's right.
And most of the time, it's not news.
Exactly. Very good point.
I think, most believers don't really grab yet the concept that liberty is given by God.
Right.
Liberty is not given by a government. Therefore, the government cannot take your liberty away because the government didn't give you that liberty. But we're seeing in light of the churches, I think one of the biggest issues is we've always had this mentality of the separation of church and state, which is never a constitutional legality. But what it's done is when you take things like the Johnson Amendment, and it says, okay, churches can no longer endorse and ask their people to vote for a candidate, then all of a sudden the churches back off and say, well, we can't really talk about this. We can't really talk. And what they did was give up a tremendous amount of right to teach on platforms and to teach on issues and to say, I can talk about these government issues. They were never truly limited.
That's right.
Now, with Trump being in place in May of 17, he wrote an executive order that stopped the enforcement of the Johnson Amendment, which then would say a church can directly endorse a candidate and say, we should vote for this candidate because. Because of their stance on the church, because of their stance on abortion, because of their stance on Israel, because of their stance on any of these number of issues. And say, I think it's time for the church to stop being afraid, to get involved in our country, to stop being afraid to get involved in liberty.
I have said over and over again in my lifetime that God put the mechanism in place to keep our culture safe, and it was the church.
Yes.
But if the church refuses to take that role that he set, I mean, you just think about it. Anything that needs to be said on a moral basis, there are millions upon millions upon millions meeting in sanctuaries every Sunday and Wednesday and online and everything else. And the message could be shared. It could be disseminated to the people. We don't even have to listen to the media anymore. We go to the source, and that is God and his word delivered to the people he's put on earth to share his word. And, the mechanism's been there to address all of this, but the church was silenced out of fear. And I mean, we're watching this again right now. I just wonder what your take is on the first time in America's history where the church is now a state organization being controlled by states. I'm wondering how you feel about that. There is, for the first time in America's history, there really isn't a separation of church and state.
Yeah.
I mean, this is terrifying. And somebody else pointed out to me, now that all of the church information has gone onto social media, guess what that means? It's all recorded and can be used against you at a later time.
Correct.
And so I wonder, as a pastor, how that makes you. And now I'm interviewing you.
No, come on.
How does that make you feel?
Come on. It doesn't bring me any fear at all. And the reason it doesn't bring me any fear is I know that my liberty comes from God. I know my place in God. and in the kingdom of God. And quite honestly, and I can say this boldly, not so that I get arrested, but I'm not concerned about being arrested. I'm not concerned about going to court. I know that my Constitution says that no laws can be made concerning what we do. So I'm not stressed about it, because if there is any stress to be had, is that the fear that's been used to promote this pandemic would also be used in the church against the government. In other words, the church will become afraid of their government, which they have no reason to fear.
Right.
I don't
Yet.
I operate inside of a government, but I operate in the kingdom of God, which supersedes the government.
Right.
So will it cause me hassle? Will it bring about potential lawsuits and arrest and everything else? Maybe, but either I'm standing on the word of God or I'm not. And if my life, like yours, is laid down for something else other than what my original plans were, doesn't matter as long as it's for the kingdom.
Amen.
So let me ask you, when your message itself, with Aaron and with the SEAL Team 6 and with all those kind of things, it put you onto a platform with a message. Where are you seeing your best opportunities to get that message out?
Oh, that's easy. High schools.
High schools.
Wonderful.
If you can speak to the youth of this nation, you can shift the culture of this country.
Amen.
And so I have been given an incredible opportunity. And of course, Satan has completely shut it down right now, but we're not giving up.
Right.
But here's the thing. I work for a nonprofit called American Warrior Initiative.
Okay.
And here's the fascinating thing about the way God works and the way he does things like this. I tried for years to begin a high school ministry where I would go in, not calling it a ministry, but where I would go into high schools and talk about freedom, liberty, bring me in around Veterans Day or around Memorial Day or something. Let me talk to your students about the cost of freedom. Never could get it off the ground. I could not get it off the ground at all. And I kept thinking, well, God, in your day, you'll make a way, right? So I started speaking on behalf of a national mortgage company, Fairway Mortgage. And I love to brag on them because they're one of those corporations who just does the right thing all the time, and they put their money where their mouth is. And so they started a nonprofit called American Warrior Initiative. We go around the country talking to different groups of business professionals and doing in their areas, doing tremendous initiatives for a local veteran. Maybe give him a service dog or build a house or retrofit his house or just, give him a car or start a business, things like that. So I was doing that for about a year and a half when I came up with an idea of starting something called the Freedom Tour, and Fairway Mortgage completely supported the Freedom Tour. And what that has turned into is a commitment that people have made to me inside that industry that they're going to do everything they can to put me in front of 10,000 students this year. So all of these loan officers and in this mortgage industry across the nation that work with Fairway, because Fairway pays my salary, pays all of my travel expenses, they can bring me to their neighborhood and they can send me into their local high school if they make an agreement. So last year, I don't even know how many thousands of students I talked to. And that's where the impact is. And I talk about Jesus because if I'm telling Aaron's story cannot be separated from his faith.
Yeah.
And so I get to talk about that in a way that's non-confrontational. I'm not saying, hey, you guys need to have faith. I'm saying this is who Aaron was. It's part of his story. I can't leave it out, or I'd be leaving out exactly who he was and what made him what he was, because the story of his faith is so critical to what he became. And they're all fascinated that he became a Navy SEAL. But the truth is he should have never been a Navy SEAL. He didn't have a joint. He didn't have a joint in his left knee. It was ridiculous. The Navy never knew it. Let me just say, after Aaron accomplished it, when God called him to it, after he accomplished it, every time he'd come home and have time with me post-deployment or something like that, every single time he would look at me and say, I cannot believe God let me do this, because it was the calling on his life from a young child. And so I tell that story. It's powerful when a kid says, oh, he had no ACL in his left knee, but he became a member of SEAL Team 6. What? Wow. And then I'm able to look at those kids and I say, what dream is too big for you?
That's awesome.
Because you don't have, you know what I mean? When God calls you to something, he provides everything you need to accomplish it.
Come on.
And it's just a testimony. So I get to share the testimony of Aaron's faith and how he constantly raised his hands in praise to God for allowing him to accomplish what God had called him to. And never forgot that, and so it's beautiful. And then I also get to speak about freedom and the cost of it. And I tell you what, I can't tell you about one time I've spoken to a body of students where at least 300 or 400 kids haven't come up and held me in their arms after it's over to tell me their entire mentality about this nation is different.
You sit here today with a Ops 300
Yeah.
shirt, which is actually a net of Aaron's stories.
That's
So tell
right.
us a little bit about Op 300.
So when Aaron died, he left behind 2 small children, Reagan, who was not quite 2, and a wife. She did the hard work, but Reagan, who was not quite 2, and Chamberlain, who was 9 weeks old. And Kimberly, Aaron's widow, kept saying over and over to us in tremendous grief, who is going to teach my children to do the things their father would have taught them? It was overwhelming to her to think of Aaron and a man like Aaron not being part of her children's life. And so that birthed the idea of Operation 300. And actually our daughter Tara, who was Aaron's best friend throughout his entire life, they were only 21 months apart, and they were inseparable. She was the one who founded Operation 300. And what it is it started out, it's expanding, but the primary goal when we first began was to provide weekend-long adventure camps, just crazy adventure camps for kids whose dads have died during this war. And we paired the children up with father-aged male mentors and let them spend a weekend doing the things they would have done if their dad were still here. And it's been very powerful. We serve about 350 children, Gold Star children a year. They get to come to camp once a year. And their moms get to come, and we put their moms up in a swanky hotel in West Palm Beach and let them spend a weekend away from kids. You know, they're single moms who have gone through a horrible life experience and don't have many people around them normally that understand what they've been through. And so they get to bond, and it's been beautiful what's happened from it. So we're 8 years into Operation 300 now.
And how many camps are you doing?
We do 7 camps a year.
Wow.
We were just gifted property, 20 acres here in Martin County, right off Pratt Whitney Road. And so we're developing the property right now. And what a gift, just such a gift. And so it's going to allow us to expand in a lot of ways. And
if
we're very
someone
excited.
were to want to either give, be a part of, help out with Operation 300, how do they get a hold of you?
So just go to op300.org. And there are forms on there. If you want to mentor, you just click that button. If you want to just volunteer to provide meals or to, just haul things around or, errands or setting up camp or tearing it down, there's a place to do that too. And, we have probably well over 1,000 volunteers in our database from Martin County, which has just been incredible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what we have seen, the way people have reached down to these kids and lifted them up has been awe-inspiring. People from the church, people from the military, people from fire rescue, from the sheriff's departments, from West Palm Beach up to Sebastian. People from sheriff's departments have joined in our efforts, and it's been a beautiful thing to see.
With the few minutes that we have left, what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity to address the people of Martin, St. Lucie, Okeechobee, West Palm, just that viewing audience. Tell me what you would want to say to them.
Well, that's critical, and I'm glad you gave me this opportunity. What I would say is we're living in times unprecedented with the whole COVID crisis and the shutdowns. We've seen power grabs all over our nation. We've seen things happening that we never thought as free people we would experience. And I can tell you that the souls of the 1.3 million men and women who gave their lives for this nation are rolling over in their graves right now, watching the liberty grabs going on. And so if I had anything to say to the people, I would say, don't allow it. Don't let fear overcome, somebody said, don't let fear overcome your reasonability and your acknowledgement of what's been sacrificed to give you those liberties. Each one of them were gained ground that took a lot of blood, a lot of treasure, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of personal grief. I always say 7,000 men have died during this war, men and women, excuse me. That means that there are 14,000 parents that have buried a young child, in the prime of their life during your lifetime, right now. Not World War II, not Vietnam, not a war in the past. But if you take all of that into consideration, if you go back to the 1.3 million throughout our history, that is 2.6 million moms and dads who have had to put a child in the ground to secure the ground taken that provided liberty. And so somebody said on Fox the other day, they were interviewing these restaurant owners who the government was really giving a hard time. And they gave a little tagline that I loved, and he said, it's time to flatten the fear. Well, we flatten the curve.
Right.
It is time to flatten the fear. As believers, we are not supposed to be living in fear.
Agreed.
Take that to a spiritual level. That is not where we were supposed to be. And this nation was founded on godly principles, which means we were pioneers. We were people who were fearless. We were people who climbed mountains out west just to claim a new piece of ground or explore a new area. I mean, everything in our core says drive, push, work, explore, have resolve of the American spirit. My son had a tattoo on his arm and it read Molon Leve. And what it is it's a phrase from King Leonidas when he came up against King Xerxes. He and his 300 Spartans came up against King Xerxes in their final stand. And King Xerxes had so much respect for these Spartans that he said, lay down your weapons and live. He didn't want to kill them. And they shouted back Molon Leve, which means come and take them. That is the spirit of our nation. Come and take them. Like, when did we lose that spirit? When did we say, here's our table, we'll lay them on the table? No, come and take them. You know what I mean? No, it's come and take them. That's who we are as a people. And we need to stay that way. And we need to understand what it cost to get what you have.
Right.
And it's ridiculous to throw it away and obscene. It's obscene to throw it away. Flatten the fear.
Karen, I want to thank you so much for being here today. And I want to thank you that not only through you, but through some of the things you're doing, Aaron will never be forgotten. And I just want to say this to the church at large. There has never been a more important time for us to stand up for our God, stand up for the liberty we were given by our God, and to stop fearing our government. It's time for us to stand up for the things of God in the kingdom of God and recognize that we have an authority that is above our government. And that may seem like a very scary statement, but when you have the peace in your heart that you have the support of God, you don't have to fear a government. So I encourage you today to consider that your liberty comes from God. In our Constitution, it states that it comes from God, and it's time to stand up for that liberty. Thank you so much for joining us today in Revive Talk. Have yourself a great week.